So we're here in Elk City, Oklahoma, Rut and Strut Outfitters. Had a great hunt earlier. Got this beautiful Rio here. We're gonna walk you through how to cape and get this bird ready for travel. This is a super easy process, really inexpensive, but a beautiful way to display your bird. Let's get to it. So the first thing you'll want to do is get a good spot to hang the bird from. I typically use a low-hanging tree, but feel free to use whatever you prefer. Now you'll want to hang it with the head facing up, and make sure you put it at a height that makes it easy to work with. To keep this bird from spinning around while you're working with it, you can have somebody either hold it from the back. I like to use this ground anchor to tie it off of the feet. Now this makes it way easier to work with. Alright, now we got this bird set up and ready to go. The first thing we want to do is cut off the wings. This will make it far easier to work with them not getting in the way. Be sure to save these wings because you can add these to your cape to make a great display if you want. So now that we got the wings out of the way, we can start with caping this thing. Just come down a little bit from the base of the neck, and you're just going to want to cut straight across. And once you start working on that, you can use the feathers a little bit at the beginning. Try to keep from pulling on the feathers too much. You don't want those popping out. So once you get started, just kind of work your way down the back, coming along the sides, pulling a little bit and cutting it on it as you go down. Be careful when you get to the spot where the skin touches the backbone. The skin gets really thin here, so you just want to be very careful and use your knife to slice it. Try not to pull too much because it can tear. So now that we got all the way down, just use your knife to cut around the base of the tail fan and just pop it off right at the joint. Alright, now this thing's ready to travel. Just fold it in half and put it in some type of rigid bag or case where it won't get damaged. Alright guys, so we're back from Oklahoma. Made it safe. Bird traveled really well. Alright, we got the bird caped out in the field, so now that we got it back home, we're going to walk you through the last steps to get this bird ready for display. I like to start with a 2x4 sheet of plywood. It will give us a good clean surface to work on and allow us to move it easily once we put it up to dry. One little tip that I recommend is to use a carpenter square and draw a straight line across, about 1/3 of the way down the board. This will allow us to line up our fan perfectly straight when we nail it to the board. Starting at the base of the neck, you'll want to remove as much excess meat as you can to make sure the skin dries properly. I like to use a good sharp fillet knife here and just carefully trim it off, making sure not to puncture the skin. Just work your way down until you get to the base of the fan. You don't have to get it perfectly clean, but the more you remove, the faster it will dry. Once you get to the tail, it's a lot easier to work with if you fold it so the base of the tail fan is sticking out. Again, we just want to remove as much excess meat as we can here. The best indicator that you got it cleaned properly is when you can see the yellow fat on the skin. A wood chisel also works well here to scrape off the meat in those hard to reach areas. One of the last things to do before we get it ready for drying is to remove the small bone on the back of the tail fan. This bone will keep it from laying perfectly flat when you go to pin it if it's not removed. So if you cut on either side of it, you can just snip it out with a pair of shears. Alright, so now that we got this all cleaned up, we're ready to pin it down. Make sure when you lay the bird out, start on one side of the board and pull it over to its final position. This will ensure that your feathers are good and flat before it dries. Now we can use the line we drew to square up the tail fan. Just put the base of the tail fan centered on the board and pull down on both sides of the fan until they're level with the line on both sides. Then nail down both sides of the fan and you're good to go. Be sure to not drive the nails in all the way since you will have to remove these later on. Once it's nailed down on both sides, go ahead and drive a nail through the base of the tail fan to make sure the bird doesn't move while we nail down the rest of the feathers. Check for proper spacing in your tail feathers before you nail them down so there isn't a gap once they dry. So everything looks good here. We can move on to the body. This part is pretty easy. Working your way down, just stretch the skin back and make sure your feathers are sitting flat. Once the skin is pulled back, go ahead and nail it down to the board, spacing your nails every 3 to 4 inches. A good trick here is to use roofing nails with plastic washers. It makes them a lot easier to see and remove once the drying is complete. Once you get to the base of the neck, be sure and tuck those feathers under and drive a nail in to hold it down. If you have any excess down feathers left over, you can just trim those off since they won't show through the back feathers. So we got it all stretched out. All we got to do now is just put the borax on. Borax is basically a detergent that will remove all the moisture from the skin of the turkey. You know, it's probably best to wear gloves here, but I'm a little hard-headed. When applying the borax, be sure and put a heavy coat of it on and just rub it in, making sure to get all the grooves, giving you a nice final coat. All right, so once we got the borax on, that's pretty much it. You know, we'll put this up in the garage somewhere high, out of the way. We'll let it sit for about 3 to 4 weeks, allow for proper drying time, and then from there we'll move on to the next step, cleaning it up and getting it ready to hang. All right, this bird's been drying for about a month now. Even had time to shave off the old beard. Now all we gotta do is get all this borax off. I like to use a shop vac here. Some people think that this will damage the feathers, but I've never had any problems with it. All right, looking good. Now that we got that all cleaned up, we can go ahead and remove the nails and get it ready to hang. Makes it a little easier to grab the nails with this blue plastic part. All right, I think we got them all off here. Let's turn it over for the big reveal. It's a good looking reel right there. Everything came out good, and you can just kind of play with the feathers a little bit, get it all cleaned up before you hang it. And so to hang it, you'll find the base of the tail fan and just kind of drive a nail right through there to your wall. And then the feathers, you just kind of push them over it and it'll cover the top of that nail. And that's it. All right, looks good. Let us know if you got any taxidermy tips, and be sure to head over to Rated Red's YouTube channel and hit subscribe. I'm Josh Wimberley.